It's funny when I talk to neurosurgeons, everybody's a little bit different as far as how they came to the field, and some people come relatively early and some people come late. For myself, I kind of talked about being a surgeon or brain surgeon really since I was a kid. My parents were in business, and they did a great job and had fantastic careers in that. But I wasn't really interested in that. The idea of kind of going to an office every day and carrying a briefcase, at least what in my head I kind of thought that was. I was really interested in science, like the chemistry sets and that sort of thing. I like challenges, complex math problems and that sort of thing were things that interested me when I was younger. And I looked at different careers. I looked at being an astronaut. It was kind of a thing that was out there. At one point after Top Gun, I thought about being a fighter pilot because it just seemed like kind of technical and cool and fun and challenging. But at some point I just kind of settled on, hey, I'd like to work with my hands, I'd like to be able to help with people and, when they're in tough situations. And so I started telling people and telling my family I'd be a surgeon. My mom actually likes to tell two related stories around this. She says that when I was born, that the doctor who delivered me, who actually delivered all of my siblings in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, looked at my fingers and said, it's like, wow, he's got these thin, long fingers. He's going to be a pianist or a surgeon. Then another one is I was a kid in a pediatrician's office and started rattling off the names of the various equipment, stethoscope and otoscope and whatever. And the doctor was like, that's right. And so I looked to my mom and said, look, Mom, I'm practically a doctor. So she likes to tell those as kind of early signs that maybe this was something that I was supposed to do. But nevertheless, continued to study science in elementary school and really enjoyed that. And going through, as I approached middle school, I think around that time it became a turn, and it wasn't just I want to be a surgeon, but I started saying I want to be a brain surgeon, in part because people would talk about, hey, it's not brain surgery and that sort of thing, and there was this mystique around this career that this was this really challenging career that not a lot of people could do. And my parents had told me very consistently, you can be anything that you want to be. So I figured, why not set my sights on something high? So then, around then, 10, 11, I started telling people that I'm going to be a brain surgeon. One of my aunts around that time gave me Ben Carson's book, Gifted Hands. And what I took from that book at that age was simply that neurosurgery was this field that was really challenging, where you got to do life-changing procedures for people and help them when they were faced with really, really challenging problems. And I loved that description of like doing something different with your hands every day, helping people every day. And so from then on, that's what I told people. If they asked me, I'm going to be a brain surgeon when I grow up. My first email account, Hotmail account that I got way back in the 90s was DREKIndo at hotmail.com. And any of my friends from that time can tell you, oh yeah, Edjah's going to be a doctor. So, go through high school, do science, biology, physics, chemistry, all those things were fun. I really liked physics and math. And so when I got to college, and I was undergraduate at Stanford, I was like, you know what, I'm going to be a physics major. And I'd been told, you don't have to be a biology major to be a physician. And also I was like, well, let me look at some of the things that I'm kind of naturally interested in and see if those are going to become a career path for me. And so I did the physics honors series to start. And, it was fun, very challenging. And, the class was such that it was kind of small and close-knit. They actually made a T-shirt at the end for the class, like you survived the physics 60 series. And while I enjoyed it, by the end of the course, the questions were like, if you threw a baseball from a spaceship next to the moon and a beam of light hit it, like what color would it be? I mean, it was stuff that was just not practical. I mean, it was just really out there for the applied mathematics and stuff that you were doing, which was fun, but I couldn't see that specifically being my career. And started to push me back towards medicine and biology and that sort of thing. And between my freshman and sophomore years of college, we had a seminar series that people could apply for, sophomore college. And Dr. Susan McConnell, who actually really became my first research mentor, led one of those. It was brain and behavior and brain development. It was, nature versus nurture in brain development. And in this course, it was really nice to use the Socratic method to walk us through some of the seminal scientific discoveries in brain development. She would, ask us things like, how would you figure out whether, a cell that's in the eye already knows how to get back to the brain, or if it needs some sort of external signal from light to kind of guide it. We would talk through, well, you could sever this nerve here at this point in development and see this and see how things change, and we would talk it through. I was very active in that class and very vocal. And sure enough, as she would walk us through these things, us as a class would come up with the hypotheses that really gave us some of the breakthroughs in brain development. And that was the first time that I really started to understand that, my mind, which I kind of conceived of as kind of a very computer calculator-like mind that was good at, equations and math and that sort of thing, could also do this other kind of creative thing of, figuring out new ways to answer problems. And so I was like, that this science thing seems pretty cool. And talking with Dr. McConnell after the course, I asked her, I said, could I, work in your lab and do some research? And she typically only took, honors level biology students in her lab, but, she'd seen my engagement in the course and thought that I had some promise. And so she offered me a position for my work study job to work as a tech in her lab. And I got to do, PCR and kind of work with mice and just learn about, how one really does the work that becomes science. And was very fascinated by that and started to think, okay, well, yes, I want to do medicine, I want to help patients, but I could also do this science thing too. So ended up switching from physics to biomechanical engineering, which was, again, a little bit more practical. Enjoyed that, kind of got my pre-med stuff out of the way. And then decided to apply to medical school because, even though I looked at bioengineering as a career, again, it missed that, very direct, patient interaction, helping people on a day-to-day basis. So when I went to medical school, I told myself, okay, we're going to get here, and I know you've been telling people for a long time you're going to be a brain surgeon, but let's keep an open mind. Let's just see what med school is about, and so go through the basic blocks and do anatomy, and all of that was great and fascinating. It was just like again, this opportunity to do this thing I've been talking about for my whole life, and actually learn stuff about it, and I was throwing myself into it. And then the way that my medical school worked, the University of Pennsylvania, we then did these organ blocks, and so it was the heart, and how does the heart work, and what's its pathology, and the anatomy, and how do you help disease. And then same thing for brain and behavior. There's a brain and behavior block, there's a kidney block, lungs block. And I'm kind of going through the motions in most of them, but when we hit that brain and behavior block, which actually was relatively early in our year, I was just blown away. I loved everything about studying the brain. I loved learning, what the various nuclei were in the brainstem and sketching that out. I was fascinated by the neurology residents who were able to again, just come up with the whole anatomy of the brain, just, with a sketch of paper. And when we're studying neuroanatomy, I mean, yes, I've studied my whole life, getting through college and that sort of thing. But it was one of the first times I was just really so excited to just throw myself into the material, and wanted to learn every little last thing about it. And so I knew I had to do something with the brain. I was going to the surgery interest group stuff, and there were cool robotic things going on in cardiac surgery, and plastic surgery had some really intricate stuff, but they didn't have the brain. And so for me, I had to do something that involved the brain. So made that decision, then we started doing our rotations. And I tried to like some other things. I was like, okay, well, neurosurgery is like 7 years, and I want to have a family and that sort of thing. And you hear about things about how the stereotypical neurosurgeon works forever and doesn't, have time to do other things. And there's a lot of fascinating specialties that are similar. Orthopedic surgery shares the spine with neurosurgery in many ways, and ear, nose, and throat surgeons, they do a lot of the approaches for some of the big cases we do. And there are some tumors of the base of the skull where the ENT surgeon does most of it, and the neurosurgeon just helps. Ophthalmology, I looked at the eye. I mean, there's nerves there, and kind of intricate surgeries. But when it came down to it, when I did my neurosurgery rotation and I saw a craniotomy for the first time, and I saw the brain exposed and it's pulsating there was no turning back for me. Here's this opportunity where someone or someone's family member has decided that you are the person that they trust to take a chance and help their loved one to operate on the seat of their soul, their brain. And there's really nothing that can compare to that for me. So I knew I was going to be a neurosurgeon from there. I had, during medical school, continuing to weave the research piece in between my first and second year of medical school. I did research in the lab of Don O'Rourke, who was also a neurosurgeon-scientist, someone who studied brain tumors. There was the first time I saw how brain tumor cells grew and just how aggressive they were. It's almost you could throw anything at them and they would just continue to grow through it. And was again fascinated by just how big of a challenge this seemed to be. And then again, learning about these patients and the lack of treatments that we had and the lack of progress that we had made in treating brain tumors at that time just let me know that, hey, this is a big challenge, and somewhere that if you can make one small breakthrough, if you can just figure something out, you can have a profound impact on the lives of many, many people. And so it started to hone in on maybe brain tumors are a thing that I'll study in my career later on. And from there, I was ready to apply for neurosurgery. Was very fortunate to match at Emory University, where I started my neurosurgical career, and spent 7 years here learning clinically to be a neurosurgeon. So the process of me deciding to be a neurosurgeon, there were different phases to it. I often tell people that at the very beginning it was kind of this naive aspiration of just, hey, there's a cool thing called a neurosurgeon, maybe I could be that too. But every step of the way, while I interrogated that desire and asked questions. Well, you want to do surgery, but what type of surgery do you want to do? You want to answer tough challenges, but what challenges do you want to address? The answer kept coming back to neurosurgery, and it was obvious that that's what I should do.